Everyone. We are recording, so if anyone's not comfortable being recorded, please leave your cameras off. And let's see if my screen wants to work. There we go. And when facility presenters are speaking, let's try to remember to be respectful. If you want to be loud in the back, that's okay, but have your mic muted because I know we want to have fun too. And then if you do have any questions, there should be a little like hand emoji at the bottom where you can try to raise your hand and we'll let the presenter know that you want to talk, or if you want to put any questions in the chat box, we'll read the chat and we'll ask the presenter when they pause, okay? And see, our presenters today are Caitlin Deskins, and she is an AmeriCorps. She also at the West Virginia Division of Forestry, and she's an outreach aide. So she's going to be talking to us a little bit and doing the Slice of Life activity. And then Susan Parker is with the West Virginia Youth Environmental Program, and she will be doing the Trouting About activity with us today. So, Caitlin, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Caitlin Deskins, and I'm AmeriCorps working with the West Virginia Division of Forestry. And I recently graduated from college with a geology degree. So I like looking at rocks and looking at minerals, and there is a difference between minerals and rocks. It's not all rocks, like everyone wants to say, but that's kind of a little pet peeve that us geologists have.
Right. Do you want to explain the difference quickly? You can.
Well, minerals are just a piece of a rock. So if you see a lot of minerals, that means that, and they're all connected, that would be a rock. But if you just see a mineral and that's it, that's just a mineral.
Very cool. And some minerals can be really good for our nutrition too, right?
Yes. You put in your like flavored water or your Gatorade. Those are your, or Powerade, whichever brand you like to drink.
I know zinc is really good for immune systems.
Yeah.
And then Susan, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. I'm actually joining you from Romney. I live in the Eastern Panhandle, so I'm the District 2 coordinator. And I just joined the DEP. I've only been here for a little over a year. I graduated from WVU with a degree in horticulture, so the study of plants. And before that, I was with Department of Agriculture for a long time, and I did a lot of work with invasive species, things like the spotted lanternfly, if you've heard about it. So
yeah, very good. Invasive species, no bueno, right? Because they can outcompete some of our species here that are native to the area, and then they unfortunately don't let the native species kind of survive. So yeah, and Caitlin, we actually had some, I guess, kids that had parents that were geologists the other day, so that was really neat.
Yeah.
All right, well, Caitlin, do you want to, I'll stop presenting and you can start your part, okay?
Sounds good. All right, so today we're going to talk about slices of life for a tree, and our life is similar to a tree, and we'll go through that today. But did you know that West Virginia has over 100 different types of trees in just West Virginia alone? And that's kind of unique too, because certain other states may only have 20 different trees, but West Virginia has 100 different types. And all those trees grow at different rates. So we have what we call hardwood trees. So like a maple or an oak, or we could think about those being trees that have leaves that change colors in the fall and then they fall down to the ground. Those could be hardwood trees. And those trees grow very slow. They take a while to expand and grow tall. But then we have spruce trees and pine trees, which those trees are just trees that look like your Christmas tree. And those trees grow very fast. And all trees will end up being a tree cookie. This is a tree cookie I have here. This one's a pretty small one, and we'll see some bigger ones today, but this one is easy to handle, so I used the small one. And we're gonna look at the tree rings. See how we have rings on this tree cookie? So those rings give us a lot of information. And there's two parts to these. we have the wide light colored rings. So there's some light colored wide rings right here. Those are for wet or spring seasons, growing seasons. And then we have dark narrow lines, which these rings are kindly harder to see. That's how narrow they are. And those are for drier seasons or like the summertime. And we can also look at these rings to determine climate or the weather of an area. So if we were looking at these rings and we saw these wider rings, we would think that that area had a lot of water in the area. Or if we saw the narrow rings, we would think that area is pretty dry compared to other areas. So we also, this tree cookie has a fire scar. So you may have a scar on your body as well. Maybe you fell off a bike and you have a scar on your arm or your leg. Trees also have scars. And just like us, where we have skin that grows over top, our trees will grow their rings around the scar. That's like their skin growing around a scar as well. And then we have the bark on the side of a tree. This is the protective layer for a tree, just like our skin is our protective layer for our bodies. The bark is protective layer for a tree. And today we're going to talk about 3 different tree cookies and 3 different trees. This one is called a spruce tree, so that's why it's kind of small. But if you remember, the spruce tree grows fast. And this spruce tree, again, has that fire scar. And if we were looking at that fire scar and we were looking at the whole area where this tree was at, we might be able to determine how far that fire went or which direction that fire was going, just based on the scars that are left on the tree cookies in that area. So now I'm going to flip the camera around to show you my 2 other tree cookies. Here is an oak tree. And this oak tree was found on the border of West Virginia and Virginia in Hampshire County. And then we have a cottonwood tree. And this tree has really wide rings. Why would it have wide rings? Can you guys tell me? Do you guys remember why it might have wide rings? You could put it in the chat or think about it in your head. And I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it, and then I'll tell you guys. Water, yes. Water is a very good answer for this because cottonwoods love water, and the water that they get helps them grow very fast. And the rings could also mean that they were getting the sunlight or nutrients that they needed to grow. Just like us as humans, we need food and water to grow big and strong. So do trees. They need their food and water to grow their big rings. So we also, again, have this spruce tree, and we have the wide rings on one side and narrow on the other. Why might it have grown like that with narrow on one side, but really wide rings on the other? You can put that in the chat or think about it in your head. Okay, well, if you were just thinking about it in your head, the wide rings could be there was a lot of water in the area, and the narrow rings or sunlight in the area, water, nutrients, and sunlight, and the narrow rings there wouldn't be as much water, soil, and sunlight able to reach it. Or maybe this tree could have been on a hill as well, and all the water rode down and made wider rings on one side and narrow rings on the other because all the water and nutrients and sunlight hit one side of the tree compared to the other. So now I'm going to give you guys a little quiz. We're going to make the spruce tree we were talking about letter A. And we're going to do letter A for spruce. And letter B for the oak tree. Between the spruce tree and the oak tree is A or B odor. Which one do you think, A or B? Which one is odor? You can think about it in your head or put it in the chat. So if you were thinking, oh,
Jude said B.
B. Oh, very good. So this oak tree is older than the spruce tree. This oak tree is 114 years old. So there's 114 rings going around this tree, and that tells us the age of the tree. Then the spruce tree is 62 years old. So in this little bitty tree, we have 62 rings. That's a lot of rings for this little bit of space. All right. So now, what if we were talking about the spruce tree and the cottonwood tree? Which one of these two is older, A or C?
Jude said C.
C. Oh, that's good. Okay. Actually, the smallest tree, our spruce tree, letter A, is older than letter C, the cottonwood tree. This spruce tree, remember, is 62 years old, and the cottonwood tree is 52. So this spruce tree is 10 years older than the biggest tree cookie we have on the table. And it is the youngest out of all of them. And the spruce tree happens to be older. So it kind of proves that it doesn't matter the size of the tree. It matters how many rings the tree has that we can see and count. That determines the age of the tree, not how big it is, but the rings that have grown around it. And again, we can look at rings to determine weather conditions in an area or the climate of an area, if it's wetter or drier than certain other areas, or if there was a big fire from the scars that we have on these tree cookies. So that kind of explains what tree cookies are. Now I'm going to show you some examples of other people's tree cookies, and then we're going to make our own. So the first example that I have is from a 23-year-old. They made their tree cookie, and you can see they made it with black and green lines. At the beginning, their lines are kind of far apart. So maybe they thought they were growing really fast in those years, or they were learning a lot in those years. And then their first green line represents them going from kindergarten to first grade. So that was like a major event in their life. So they decided to make that a different color. Then we have these narrow rings. So maybe for the next few years, they didn't seem to be learning as much, or maybe they hit a growth stump where they stopped growing. And then they turned 13. So their next green line, they made a 13 in their first year as a teenager. And then we have some lines that are a little further apart than the other lines here. Before we get to our next green line, that was their Sweet 16, their next major event in life. And then the next one, next green line, they turned 21. So they thought that was their next major event in life until they hit 23, the last year that they are right now. So that is a bigger tree cookie than probably yours will look like, but let's look at some examples of some smaller ones. So here we have someone's tree cookie. They were 8 years old, and they made their lines far apart at the beginning. So they were growing really fast or learning a lot. Whatever you want to put behind how far apart you want your lines or how close you want your lines, it all depends on what you're thinking about how your life went. So then they had narrow lines, and then maybe this side looks like it's further apart than other sides of the tree cookie they made. So that could mean that maybe they were learning a lot at one point of the year, but not as much as another point of the year. So that's another example. It's not a perfect circle, but it doesn't have to be. So the last example I'm going to show you guys before we make your own is this one. This person did the wine rings again. They made a green ring for their 4th birthday, and then they made a brown for their 5th, and then they put a fire scar in there. And they did that because they were riding their bicycle one day and fell, and it left a scar on their arm. So they decided to put that in their tree cookie. So if you have a scar and you know when you had that accident that you got that scar, you could add it to your tree cookie. So those are just some examples. And we're going to go ahead and make our own. So if you have a paper plate or a piece of paper, go ahead and grab that. And you can grab markers, crayons, whatever you want. I'm going to use markers. And I'm going to use black so that you can see it, but you can use any color that you want. And every tree cookie is going to look different. So you can use some of the examples that I saw and make your lines squiggly, smooth, far apart, close together, whatever you decide your life looks like. So we're going to first start with a dot right in the middle of your paper or paper plate. That is when you were born, your very first day of life. Then we're going to put a circle around that dot. And that circle can be really close or far apart, whatever you think. However you want to make your slice of life. And that represents your first year of life. And maybe I'll put a number 1 beside it. You don't have to, but if you would like to, you can put a 1 as well. So you know how many rings you have, and you don't have to go back and count again. And we're going to draw another circle for our 2nd year of life. And you're going to keep doing this until you hit however old you are right now. And make it your own. You can change colors. So maybe my 3rd year was a really cool birthday party. So I wanted to put it as a different color. And maybe my 4th year, I learned a lot at certain parts of the year, but at the end, I wasn't learning as much. So I'll put it far apart from the rest of the lines at one part of the year compared to the rest of the year. Or maybe one year was kind of hard for you, so you wanted to do a squiggly line instead of a smooth line. That's completely fine. You just make it however you want and go until you hit your age you are right now. And continue to make a circle. And I'm going to end with 5 years for this example, but you keep going until you've hit yours and make your own. Maybe I'll add a scar to my 4th year. Maybe I had a bicycle accident as well. Put a fire scar there. And once you get done, everyone's is going to look different again. And maybe if your parents will let you, you can keep your tree cookie and add a new circle every year it's your birthday. And then you're adding a new layer just like a tree would add a new layer. So that is the activity. So if you have any any questions about my presentation, you can put it in the chat box or raise your hand so that we can let you unmute yourself.
Does anybody want to show their tree cookie?
Nice. You can turn your mute off if you would like, and anyone can explain their tree cookie and the different things that happen in their life. Wow, nice job, Linda. Here's mine.
Jude had their hand up as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't put it up.
If you're comfortable turning your video on, you can. Wow, great job. You learned a lot between 5 and 6. Great job, Brian.
Well,
There's
that was
mine.
kindergarten, so
Yeah.
What was
I-
that, Jude?
that was the year of kindergarten.
Oh,
Ah,
yeah.
nice.
I remember learning so much in kindergarten. And you got nap time. Nice job,
I guess you
Brian.
probably can't see it, but there's a lot of, those are hits, the little scars. That's where I really started mountain biking a lot. So I got a lot of scars from mountain biking.
Nice.
I have some after, apparently I fell off a stool when I was little that I don't remember and broke my clavicle. But then I also have some from skiing, snowboarding, riding horses, kayaking.
We have a couple other hands up too.
Yeah. All right, Lillian, go ahead. Wow,
Oh,
yours is so neat.
I accidentally made it a little older than how old I am.
That's okay. You can
It's
kind of,
birthday rings instead of 7.
yeah, that's okay. It's maybe like imagining how the next year of your life is going to go, right? Do you want to explain any more about yours? Nope. Oh, it looks really great. Good job.
Do you want to?
Do you want to show your slice of life, your artwork?
You want to show this? Hey. He's still working on it.
That's okay. You can always show us later. Jude, do you want to, it looks like you had a question or you wanted to show us something? Thanks, Lillian.
Hold on, my brother's up here.
Okay. I like this activity because you can reflect on different things that happen in your life and how it affected you.
We had somebody one time that put their ring as puppy prints because that's when they got their first dog and they really liked it. And so puppy
Oh,
prints all the way around.
oh my goodness, that's such a great idea. Mine would have horse prints and puppy prints and maybe some chicken prints. Great job. Oh my gosh, so good. That looks wonderful. Jude, did you still want to show us anything?
No, I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but
That's okay. No worries. Well, if you guys want to send us pictures of your slices of life, we can post them online if you're comfortable. We love to share your beautiful artwork and it's so fun. And are you guys ready to do the troutening about activity with Susan? All right, well, Susan's going to take it away.
Awesome, I'm ready. Okay, guys, well, how cool was that? We get to learn about tree cookies. I've done that activity before. with Caitlin. And it's so fun to look at the years and how you've grown and things you've experienced. So my presentation is more based on fish. So I don't know how many of you guys fish or if you've ever fished in Deckers Creek. If you've been able to catch any big fish or small fish or whatnot. But we are going to go on a little adventure, and it's called Trouting About. And we're actually each going to become a trout. So before we go trouting on our little adventure, I just want to give you a little bit of information. So we're actually going to be brook trout, and brook trout are the only native trout species in West Virginia. But there's some others that we might find. There's a brown trout, there's a rainbow trout, there's the golden rainbow trout, which I don't know if you guys ever heard about. They did this thing called the gold rush, where they stocked a lot of these different rivers with these gold trout that were raised at fish hatcheries, and the DNR stocked them into different streams. But the brook trout is our only native trout species, and it's the official state fish. We were talking before we came on about what the state bird was and the national bird. Well, the state fish is the brook trout. So what's really interesting about trout and what makes them really desirable that people want to go and fish for them and try to get big trout is that they are freshwater fish. So won't find them in the ocean, only in rivers and streams. And they like streams that are less than 15 feet wide. So a lot of our smaller backwoods streams of West Virginia is where they like to live. They also like numerous pools. So like Deckers Creek has a bunch of waterfalls. So those pools underneath are perfect for trout fish. They also really like cold streams. So you want to remember that as we go through our game, that it's important for trout fish to have cold waters. They like 50 to 60 degrees waters. So think about it. What makes water cold? What would grow along the riverbanks? Something we just talked about. Trees, right? So these trees are overhanging the river and they make it cooler, and that's perfect for trout. So they like well-shaded cold streams. They also like really clean streams. So that's a goal of Deckers Creek, that they've been working very hard to get their stream to be pure and clean, because trout need that. And not only do trout need that, but all of the other what we call aquatic invertebrates, things like mayflies and caddisflies and stoneflies, which are these tiny insects that live in the water. Well, the trout like to eat them. So we need clean water so that those insects are there for the trout to eat, as well as some other fish that they eat. So the next part of it is we're actually going to be getting up, moving around. We're going to be trouting about. So everybody was asked to have a dice. And what you can do is there's going to be certain slides where you roll your dice, and you can put that right into the chat box. If you don't have dice, there's a link that you can go to where you can virtually roll dice, but you want to make sure that you only select one die, because two will put us through the game pretty quickly. So have your dice ready to roll if you want to participate in the chat box, and give yourself plenty of room, because we're doing jumping jacks, we're going to be spinning around. So get in an area where you can move a little bit, and we're get ready to trout about. So let's do our first station. You are swimming in your home in Deckers Creek. So if you want to swim with me, we're swimming in Deckers Creek. It's so nice. This is a tributary of the Monongahela River. So we're going to roll our dice to start our adventure, and then you guys can type that into the chat box. So let's see if we have anything. Anybody roll their dice yet? Well, I'll go ahead and roll mine. Looks like I got a 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So we end up at stream station number 4. A girl, hopefully you guys can see my whole screen. A girl painted a picture outside her home. Ooh, we all like to do that, right? Everybody likes to paint a picture. Well, when she finished, she poured the extra paint onto the ground. Why would that be bad? Anybody know? We're talking about watersheds and how the water comes down from the high points. Well, if you want to put the answer in the chat box, you can. So basically the rain washed that paint right into the stream, and then you, being the fish, you drank it. Yeah. Oh, looks like we got a couple of numbers in the chat box. So because rain washed the paint into the stream, you drank it, your stomach doesn't feel so good. So rub your belly 10 times. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. And it looks like we had someone roll a 5, Jude. So we're gonna go, we actually have to go back to station 2 first because we were feeling sick. So we're going to go back. 1, let's see. Oh, why won't you go back? Doo-doo-doo-doo. So we were at station 4, so we're gonna go back to, so we're gonna be at stream station number 2, and it says a small ripple gives us an extra burst of speed. Swim to station 6. So let's swim quickly to station 6. Ugh, a farmer plowed his field all the way down to the edge of the riverbank. Now the dirt is being washed into the stream. You have a hard time breathing with all that sediment. So we know that it's important for us to have trees and vegetation along the edges of our stream, especially Deckers Creek. So that way when it rains, the dirt just doesn't break loose and go into there. And that's what is called sediment. So we are going to do 10 jumping jacks, pretending that our arms are our gills and that we have to work extra hard to breathe. Everybody ready? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, but now we have to go back to station 3. You get caught in a whirlpool. Spin around in a circle 6 times, then roll the die and go for that many stations. You guys ready to go again? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, we're dizzy fish now, right? Okay, so now I am going to take one of the rolls, and it looks like Jude had a 5. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A shadow appears overhead, a great blue heron. Use your camouflage and hide under a rock and count to 20 until it goes away. Then we're going to roll the die again and move forward. So everybody wants to crouch down. We're going to count to 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So it looks like our next die came from Brian and he got a 1. Stream station number 9. Loggers failed to use good forest management practices and cut down all the trees along the banks of the stream. So remember, we talked about how brook trout like cool streams. They like that 50, 60 degree streams. So now there's too much sun and the water is too hot. So we have to go back to station 7. But good news, a forester shows the farmers and the logger to plant native trees and plants along the stream bank to prevent erosion and create shade for the fish. This is called a riparian buffer zone. So a local school helps to plant the trees. So we get to move forward 4 stations. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, a dam is blocking our path. Turn around and go back 1 station. Station 10. Yum, you find some mayfly larvae to eat. Remember we talked about aquatic invertebrates and them being in the water and they're important for the fish to eat. So we get to swallow 4 times and we roll the die and go forward. So whoop, 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 whoop. I hope you guys are doing this along with me. It's not nearly as much fun. All right, so now we have another number 1 from Maya. So we're gonna go forward 1 to stream station number 11. Oh no, we hit the dam again. It's blocking our path. Turn around and go back. So we're gonna go back again. Oh, dinner time again. So we get to swallow 4 times because we found some mayfly larvae. Ready? All right, so it looks like Lillian got a number 4. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yay! The school is planting a wildflower garden in front of the school, and they're no longer using chemical fertilizers. So we know that if we use too many chemical fertilizers, or if we use them right before a rainstorm, that can be, again, that rainwater can wash that out and it can go into the stream and be harmful for our fish. So this is great. The school instead is using compost fertilizer, and that's made from their leftover lunch food and scrap paper instead. So the water is much cleaner now. Clap 10 times and then move to station 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go ahead too. Awesome. You made it to your favorite spot in the creek for spawning time. You will lay eggs and there will be more trapped. You survived. Do the happy dance. Yay. So we do have a little bit of time left if we want to try to go through it again. Do you guys want to try to do it again? Thumbs up? Yeah, let's do it one more time. Even though I might be out of breath because I'm an old lady. But let's go back clear to the beginning. Get back here. All right, back to number 1. We are swimming in our home, Deckers Creek. Roll the die to start your adventure and type it in the chat box. All right. Oh, we got a 2 from Jude. So we're gonna go 1, 2. You get caught in a whirlpool, spin around in a circle 6 times, then roll the die and go forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Woohoo! All right, and looks like we got a 6 from Lillian. So let's go that many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Loggers fail to use good forest management practice and they cut down all the trees along the bank of your stream. Now there is too much sun and the water is too hot. We gotta go back to station 7. Yay, a forester shows. That's like Caitlin, she helps with the Division of Forestry. She shows the farmers and the loggers to plant native trees and plants along the stream bank to prevent erosion and create shade for fish. This is called a riparian buffer zone. A local school helps to plant the trees. Move forward 4 stations. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, we keep running into that dam that's blocking our path. Turn around and go back 1 station. Yum, dinner time again. We find some mayfly larvae to eat. Swallow 4 times and then roll the die. Ready? All right, looks like we have a 4 from Caitlin. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, the school is planting a wildflower garden in front of the school and they're no longer using those fertilizers. Remember what they're using? They're using compost instead. And that's made from leftover lunch and food and scrap paper that would normally go into the landfill, but instead they're composting them so they get nutrient-rich soil that they can use instead. The water is much cleaner. Clap 10 times and then move to station 16. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome, you made it to your favorite spot and it's spawning time. You lay eggs and you will move. There will be more trout because you're survived. Do the happy dance. So if we wouldn't have made it there, the other option is, oh, you are caught by our fishermen. Oh no, your dinner. So something to think about. How cool that we survived both times. I thought for sure we would get caught by a fisherman. So just real quickly, I want to go through a couple of the stations that we didn't actually get to be in, just so you can know some of the things that our fish might have encountered. So we did do the whirlpool. The girl, remember, she painted the picture, but instead of properly putting her paint away, it went into the river, which was really bad. But this is important. On station 5, the Friends of Deckers Creek cleaned up the litter from the stream bank. That's very important. We want to keep litter out of our stream because that's things that fish can get caught on or they can eat and then it can kill them. So that's something you can be involved in when it's an appropriate time to come together and help the Friends of Deckers Creek clean up the bank. So we would have jumped for joy about that. Then, we talked about the farmer plowing his field all the way to the riverbank. If he would just put in a riparian buffer, that would help keep that soil in place. But thank goodness for that forester. They're always educating. That great blue heron, and we know that it eats trout. So we were able to camouflage and hide in the water. Of course, we know that fish need cooler water. If there's too much sun or there's no shade, that we won't do well. And we know they like to eat lots of different kinds of macroinvertebrates. I think I said that right. That's not up my alley, but these bugs that these fish like to eat are needed for them to live and survive. And then they do like nice cold wet water full of rapids, which we know Deckers Creek has. So we would have jumped and twisted in the air because of that. And we always want to use less chemical fertilizer or none at all if we can help it, and use instead organic fertilizer or compost, because if we get too much of those nutrients, fertilizer into our water, then we get things called algae blooms, which you can see in that picture there. Then the water gets too much algae in it and it's murky and the fish can't get through it and they can't see to eat or move. And of course, you know, our schools, by planting wildflower gardens and using compost, that's always a great idea. And then of course, we love our fishermen. So if we get caught by our fishermen, that's all right. We'll be in somebody's belly as a food source. And that concluded what I had for trouting about. Looks like Jude has a question. Jude, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
We didn't do number 2.
We didn't do number 2. Good call. Let's go back. What was number 2? Ooh, a small ripple gives us an extra burst of speed. That's where we swam really fast to station 6. What was your favorite one? Does anybody want to share what their favorite one was to do? I don't know, going around those circles, whew, I didn't think that through. That made me a little dizzy.
Jude liked number 2. Yeah, small riffles. That means good stream hydrology. So you have plenty of macroinvertebrates, which is what
There we
fish
go.
eat, like the riffles. So if you have a lot of riffles, hopefully, and good stream quality, hopefully you have a lot of macroinvertebrates, which then means you have a lot of food for fish, right?
Ah, lots of oxygen.
Lots of oxygen. Can any of you think of some native trees or wildflowers that are good for riparian areas to create a buffer zone for a watershed? Because remember, our earth helps us. It's our natural filtration. It helps us filter out some of those pollutants before they get to the watershed.
Well, I always think of hemlock trees because a lot of hemlocks grow along our waterways. And unfortunately, they've had this insect, Hemlock woolly adelgid, that has made them poor quality and even killed a lot of our hemlocks. But hemlocks are great for overhanging streams to keep them cool for our trout fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Susan, do you remember or want to talk about how you can identify if a hemlock has that woolly, what are they called? Woolly?
Hemlock woolly adelgid?
Adelgid,
Sure.
yes.
So if you come up to a hemlock tree, which is an evergreen, and you would flip over the bottoms, look at the bottom side of the trees, you might see what kind of looks like popcorn, and it's really white and fluffy. And inside of that is a microscopic small insect, kind of like an aphid. And what it's doing is it's sucking the leaves dry of their nutrients. That's why you get a lot of brown needles and they fall and drop off. And remember, trees need their leaves to produce the nutrients that they need to gather sunlight so they can live and grow.
Yeah. And if you guys want to see a macroinvertebrate and what a dragonfly looks like before it's a dragonfly, when it's in its called nymph stage, I don't know if you can see it very well, but this is what it looks like.
Yeah, you can see it.
And
Cool.
we have a few others here as well, if you guys are interested.
I love your trout hat.
Thanks.
Is that a brook trout or is it a rainbow? Do you know?
I don't think it's a rainbow, but it also doesn't look brown enough to be a brook. So maybe it's a hybrid.
It's a bass. Oh, someone says
There
it's
we
a bass.
go. Good identification.
Yeah.
I will admit I'm a little better at saltwater fish than I am at freshwater. I have to
The
brush.
thought that counts. Oh, yes. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Do you all want to see other macroinvertebrates? Do you have any interest in that?
Do you want to show that one again since my screen was still sharing?
Sure. So this is a dragonfly nymph, and it is what a dragonfly looks like before it has its wings, when it's in its nymph stage. Sorry, my camera won't focus any better than that. And the difference between dragonflies and damselflies is dragonflies have their wings horizontal, which is like this. And damselflies have their wings vertical, which is like this. So you might see, if you see dragonflies around and you're like, that dragonfly looks funny, its wings are straight up and down. That's because it's actually a damselfly. So they're a little bit different. They're different species.
Jude has a question, Maya.
Yeah, go ahead, Jude.
That dragonfly kind of looks like a big ant.
It does, right? Macroinvertebrates definitely resemble kind of terrestrial insects sometimes, right? But they have a kind of a harder exoskeleton similar. And they'll actually sometimes shed that, so then they'll become the dragonfly or damselfly. That's a
Does
really good
everybody-
observation.
Maya, can you tell us why they're called benthic macroinvertebrates? Where does that name comes from?
So invertebrate means they don't have a vertebrae. So like you and I, we have a big spine, right? Well, invertebrates don't have a big spine. And macro means they're larger, so we can see them with our human eye and don't need a microscope. And benthic means that they are part of the aquatic ecosystem. And we have some other ones here. I'm trying to see if we have any other fun ones. Do you guys, is there anything that interests you that you like to do to help the environment, or something you want to be when you grow up? Let me see. We have so many, so we take samples of these macroinvertebrates, and they tell us, depending on what macroinvertebrates we find, they tell us what the stream health is like. So some macroinvertebrates are pretty hardy. They can take a little more polluted water, and so you might find those there. But other macroinvertebrates they're more sensitive, and they have to have really, really clean water. So those ones, if we find those when we're sampling, that indicates really good quality water. So that's what we like to see when we're sampling, when we're doing our water quality samples. Like this one has a water penny in it, which is a pretty good indicator. And something called helgamites also are a good indicator. This one's kind of hard to see him because there's a bunch of little guys in here. And those all came from Delslow. All right. I do. Lynn asked if I had tree cross-section earrings on, and I have, these are cork earrings. They're actually from Portugal, and cork is a fairly sustainable product because they can band the tree, which normally you do not want to do that to a tree because it restricts the growth and it can kill the tree. So you don't want to put like wires around a tree or anything like that, because then the water that we talked about can't get up and help the tree grow. But the cork is a specific kind of species where if you do it correctly, you can take off the outer layer, which is the layer that's not currently growing. It's the older layer. And you can take it off and you can harvest it to make different products like cork boards. Yeah, cork oak, yeah. Do I have a helgramite in there? I've been looking for a helgramite and I don't know if I can find one. Helgramites have like pinchers on the front.
Yeah, hellgrammites are a good macro because macro means you can see them with your eyes, and you can definitely see hellgrammites because they are big
Yes.
compared to our other macroinvertebrates.
If you see them in a creek, you might get spooked at first if you don't know what they are. Not sure where they are. Well, I'll have to post one online because unfortunately, out of all of our samples, I don't see one right now, although I know we have them. Because we actually had a hellgrammite found in the watershed this year, which was really exciting because that means that part of the watershed is doing really good. And that part of the watershed is in the upper to middle part of the watershed. Can you think of why it might be in the upper instead of the lower? If you attended our earlier, our last webinars, we talked about how the upper part of the watershed has the fresher water sources and tributaries and springs coming into it. And by all the time all the water flows down and gets to the lower type part of the watershed, it can accumulate more pollution if we don't catch the pollution in time. So we'll typically see some better species that indicate better water quality health in the upper watershed before the pollution has gotten there. Yeah, Tommy just posted a link to learn more about macroinvertebrates in the chat. All right, does anyone else want to share anything that they've learned the past few days? Oh, you're talking, but you're muted. All right. Well, we also have a pickup activity pickup tomorrow and on Friday, one at the OLP or Outdoor Learning Park, which is the lower part of the watershed, and it's right behind the Kroger and Saberton. And the upper part of the watershed at Modern Homestead. Wonderfully, they've allowed us to put a box there, and they are a plant nursery as well. So you can get some native species there as well. So you can plant your riparian buffer zones, right? And help filter out that water before it gets to the watershed. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. And thanks for those of you that have been here multiple days in a row. We appreciate you. I hope you had a really fun time. If you want to send us any feedback on the things you did enjoy or any photos or any recommendations on what we should do next time. We love seeing photos of your artwork and your crafts, so you're welcome to share with us. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, okay? Happy Water Week.